Hello. Welcome in. Welcome in to the brand new and improved Permission to Leap. We've got some new super fun Sonic branding. I've been so excited to share this with you. And this is the energy we are bringing into 2022 here on the program at Aaron Trafford Story and Strategy at Story Studio Network. And this is the energy I want you to feel about this year. Let's just shed the skin of 2020 and 2021 and move forward, okay? We've got some really cool stuff planned for this season of the program, not the least of which is this brand new Sonic branding. But we are going to be dropping for you, never before done, behind the scenes strategy sessions exclusively for podcast listeners. These are going to come as bingeable content almost on a monthly basis. We don't have that nailed down yet, but there is one going to drop in January of 2022. So you're going to want to subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you listen to it on. And definitely follow along with me on Instagram over at its.aarontrafford, because that's where you're going to get the heads up of what's coming for you. And trust me, you're going to want this. But the other cool thing that we're going to be doing on the program this year is bringing some guests in. And not in the way that you think is typical, not necessarily like an interview session, because what I really want for you is to be invited into the fold of experts that I am in. And I want you to get to know these people. So this is going to look different than your average talking head interview here on Permission to Leap. I am going to bring to you the best of the best who I know and who I have relationships with. And we are going to give you an immersive podcast experience with these people. And we have one launching later in January, and I will tell you who it is a little bit later in the program. We're going to start teasing this out, but trust me, this is changing. We're breaking the mold of Permission to Leap. Listen, Season one, I wrote an ebook, and I turned the ebook into season 1 of the podcast. You can actually download that ebook right now at the show notes or at aarontrafford.com/ebook. It's called Permission to Leap, and it's about 100 pages of all of the upfront, hard-fought lessons that I have learned through building a digital business. Season 2 was really me stepping back into this show after having gone through the pandemic, after having gone through having a baby in a pandemic, after having gone through tripling my business again in a pandemic, and then subsequently being diagnosed with postpartum traumatic stress disorder, and really having to step into this space where I had to release a bunch of stuff about digital business, about content, about just being in the world. I had to release it all. So season 2 for me was kind of like a release and a reset. And you'll notice that in the way that we produced the show. It was produced quick and dirty. It was right off the cuff. It was literally off the corner of my desk. Season 2 has a different sound and a different feel. It's a lot gentler. It's a lot more about mindset and psychology. But season 3, oh girl, let me tell you, if you are here for season 3, you are in for a treat, because this is the energy level we are going to maintain for Permission to Leap from now on. And I am not holding back. We are going to dig into some of the hottest trends that I see happening in content strategy now. We're going to talk about specific strategies, actionable strategies. And of course, I'm going to be making invitations for how you can work with me going forward, because what I know is that my podcast is part of the highest converting portion of my content funnel. And yes, we're going to talk about what the frig a content funnel is, because there's statistics to back up why you need one. And that's actually what I want to talk about on today's show. We're going to open season 3 talking about going back to basics. What is a content strategy and why do you need one? And how to tell if you have one or not. You might think you have one, but you may not actually have one. So, I just think the time is right. And we're shifting this energy. We've got so much stuff on the go here at Aaron Trafford Story and Strategy. And I am just freaking pumped to bring you in. Absolutely pumped to bring you in. So you might actually recognize, here's a little bit of a bridge. Here's the old branding, the old Sonic branding, because I still love it. But this is where I get to officially welcome you. Okay? Welcome to Permission to Leap. I'm so glad you're here. I am so glad you're here. I am your host. I am your friend. I am your guide. I am the voice in your head whispering to you that you can do this. Because this show is for creative entrepreneurs and business owners just like you who are ready to understand content strategy, to learn from a pro like me, and to unlock the power of story to fuel their growth. And in this show, in case you're new here, I share with you my absolute no BS approach to business building and content strategy. Lessons from my decades in newsrooms as an award-winning broadcaster. Insights and actionable steps you can take right now to create true momentum in your business simply by shifting the energy around your content and the strategies you are using to share it with the world. So get ready to leap, my friend, into being bold, into being strategic, and to pushing the boundaries of what you think is possible. I am here for you. All right, so season 3, episode 1. We're just going to scratch the surface here, but I think this is going to be super useful for you if you are staring at the calendar thinking, oh, I need to get some plans in place, or if you are like I am, and at some point you just know that getting into action is what is going to bring you clarity. I am so like that. I know that when I am swirling in my brain and I'm not quite sure what my next best step is, that my next best step is to just do one small tiny thing, and usually things start to click. I mean, that's exactly how things started to click here for me for season 3 of this show, and how it is really going to become the flagship for my company, for both of my companies, which I'll tell you about as we get into season 3 a little bit more, because there's some super cool shit coming down the pike with Story Strategy Studio and Story Studio Network. See, listen to me. I'm just like blending my companies now. Story Studio Network, and how you can get involved if you want to be a podcast client, but I want to talk about that later. So let's look at this overall thing, because it's great and all if you want to have a podcast. It's great and all if you want to have a blog. It's great and all if you want to grow your Instagram. But I think what you do need to understand is what is a content strategy and why do you need one. And I'm going to start by backing this up with some data, because a lot of times you hear experts and gurus saying, you just got to do it because it works. But I'm going to back this bus up for a second for you so that you can truly understand why, if you don't have a content strategy in this day and age, you are missing, I'll just put it, you're missing money. You're leaving money on the table. Like, your business is not going to do what your business should be doing if you don't have a content strategy. And here's where the number is. And this is a number that I got from somebody I admire greatly. His name is Scott Stratton. He has a company called Unmarketing. I have been following Scott's meteoric rise in his career since, I want to say, about 2010. Maybe 11, somewhere in there. I once interviewed him for my radio show, and he was just so lovely and so gracious, and I've been following him ever since. He's huge on Twitter. You can find him at Unmarketing on Twitter. I don't do Twitter right now, but I know Scott's big on Twitter. Anyway, so here's the thing. Scott and his company were able to crunch this data, and they came up with this number that's astounding. It's freaking astounding that 60% of the buyer's decision, so their decision to buy from you, 60% of that decision is comprised of information that they have gathered about you prior to them contacting you or activating what we would call the sales cycle. So jumping onto a sales call, or clicking a buy now button, or, putting something in their cart, or emailing you, or whatever that may, filling out a contact form, whatever that may be. 60% of their yes or no sales decision is made before that event happens. And how are they making that 60% of their decision? It's based on all of the various pieces of content that they have consumed about you and by you before they get to that point. And that content, that 60% of that content, this is what we call your content flow. These are the different waves of content. These are the waves of information, of education, of thought leadership, of Q&A, of lists and, behind the scenes and all the different kinds of content. This is what allows them to easily activate and say yes or no. I often say to the students that I have in my story and strategy mentorship that you need to look at your content creation as an investment in your company. Because when you look at it as 60%, if you can increase your chances of a sale by 60%, wouldn't you be investing in that process strategically and understand why you're doing it and how it works? You totally would. I mean, another way to look at it is imagine that every sales call you hop on was 60% easier than it is now. I know that's a little bit hard to tangibly quantify ease of a call, right? But imagine, let's say you're doing 10 sales calls a week. Imagine 6 of those just naturally convert to a yes without much effort. And the reason that they do is because they have already gotten to know you through all of the content that you have been putting out into the world. They have a sense of you. They have a sense of your values. They have a sense of how your values intersect with them. They have a sense of what you offer and how that offer aligns with where they are exactly on their buyer's journey. This is what content does for you. And this is why you need to start being strategic about it. No more willy-nilly, okay? Let's just if we want to make a New Year's resolution, let's make a New Year's resolution to it being no more willy-nilly. This is about being strategic. And don't get me wrong, strategic does not mean not fun. I will also be the first person to say to you that as soon as you sit down at your desk to create content and you hear the word or feel the feeling of, ugh, I don't want to do this, it's time to go back and reevaluate. And remember how I mentioned off the top of the show that we're going to be dropping a really special series in January into Permission to Leap? This special series is one of those tools that's going to help you evaluate so that you don't ever hit that ugh moment, so that you're always super clear on what feels good and what's going to move the needle, right? But that is what a content strategy is. And I'll give you a couple things because it goes by a bunch of names. And Aaron Trafford's story and strategy, I like to call it a content flow, because if you have been in my world, you know that I am a little bit wooey. I dabble with tarot. I love the, metaphysics. I have a degree in philosophy, and I love to study all kinds of things, consciousness and so on and so forth. So the flow concept really resonates with me. So I use content flow when I'm talking about this grouping and this experience of content that your buyer goes through prior to becoming a buyer. But other people like Scott Stratton, he calls it a content cloud. Okay, so I'm very much a water element and he's very much the air element. Other people call it a content funnel, which is just I don't know, it's kind of like a boring sounding term, makes it sound like it is a sales funnel when it's really not. So I tend not to use the phrase content funnel unless I absolutely have to as a point of clarity. But we're talking about the same thing. We're using different terms, but we're talking about the same thing, right? So we're looking at content flow. It's a content cloud. It's a content funnel. Whatever it is the strategic playground for your business. And if you do not have one, or you have one and you don't understand it, then you are missing a huge piece of the puzzle, okay? So let's back up a minute, because now we kind of understand how a content strategy works in terms of activating the sale. So what is a content strategy? I was going to say, what is it not? What is it not? A content strategy is not putting your own quotes onto a Canva graphic and just blasting that out on whatever social media platform. A content strategy is not recording a podcast like this, ripping the transcript and posting it onto your website. A content strategy is not posting at the exact same time every single day and sticking to a rigid schedule. That is not a content strategy. That is just a way to create redundancies. And it's, some people that works for them for accountability, right? Like every day at 9:30, I'm going to post on social. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I do that with my business. I schedule in 30 minutes every single day where I do, for Q1 of 2022, my focuses are Instagram and LinkedIn. So that's when I do that, but it's not like I'm posting the exact same topics and phrases and thingers every single day, every single time. Like it's so much more flexible than that. And I want you to feel empowered to be flexible. If you want to schedule it into your calendar so you remain accountable, that's fine. But I don't want you to conflate the concept of accountability with the concept of being inflexible and having a plan. None of that is a content strategy. None of that is a content strategy. A content strategy is truly, truly when you create an objective for your business, which is usually selling something, opening the doors to something, launching something, offering something, inviting people into something, whatever your objective is, and it's measurable. You need to have something measurable. So you're going to have X number of people. You're going to sell it for this many dollars. You're going to run it for this long, like whatever that measurable thing is. And then you have to look at it from a values perspective. What is the value here that I bring, and how does that align with the ideal person I want to invite into it? The content you share should start from a shared values position. Because here's what we know. People who buy from you want to know that you share their values, and shared values are what create know, like, and trust. And how are shared values most easily established through content? Through narrative, through a shared understanding of narrative. And narrative is just another word for story. I use the phrase story a lot. Story is the most powerful way to cut through the noise and to create a content strategy that feels authentic, that feels aligned, that establishes those shared values and creates meaningful, memorable connection so that you are inviting your person through your flow, through your cloud, through your funnel, that 60% of their decision becomes a no-brainer yes. Okay? The other 40%, you're probably wondering what the other 40% is, not my area of expertise, but that's when you get into how your offer is crafted. Okay? That is where you get into your actual sales skills. What is your offer? What is your client experience? What does onboarding look like? All those other business operational things is the other 40%. But the first 60% is all about your content. How are you showing up in the world? Okay. So now that I've got you all energized to what it is and what it isn't, this is how I want you to walk away from today's episode, is to shift the way you are looking at your content from a chore, from a task that you need to get done, to an investment. How can you look at every single piece you create as an investment in achieving that 60% buyer decision before they meet you? And I guarantee that with that slight shift in how you are looking at your content, your strategy will start to feel good. And listen, that's one of my missions on this planet, is to help creative entrepreneurs and business owners sink into a content strategy that gives them energy, that actually fuels them and their business, that feels effing good, right? Like that is one of, I think that's actually the tagline for my mentorship, if I'm not mistaken, is like sink into a content flow that feels freaking awesome. And the minute that it doesn't, we got to go back to that value set and realign, right? This is the work that we do in the mentorship, but it's work that you can do right now on your own. It's work that I think you should do. It's worth it. Sitting down and looking, even audit the last few things that you put out into the world. I don't know what LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, your blog, your podcast. How was each of those pieces of content acting as an investment toward what you are actually trying to achieve in the next 90 to 120 days? And if you can't clearly answer that question, then reevaluate. Then drop me a direct message at its.erintrafford over on Instagram. Let's chat it out. Okay? So that, my friends, is what a content strategy is, why you need one, and your homework for the week. So much more to come on Permission to Leap. I want to give you a sense of, what's going to come next week, because I don't really do a good enough job lately of telling you what I got planned. But I got some stuff planned. I got some things sticking in my craw that I want to talk about this season. So I'm going to tell you what they are. In the next episode, I want to talk about this concept of influence. Because if you've been listening for a while, or if you've known me for a while, you know that I come from an influencer marketing background and that I very quickly moved away from that world. But I want to talk about how to be an influencer, because so many people ask me about that. So we're going to talk about that in the next show. And then I want to talk about those of you who are ready to start podcasting. We're going to talk about why most podcasts kind of suck. But we're going to talk about, and I'm going to teach you how to not suck. Because I don't want you to suck. I don't want you to suck at all. Stick with me. You won't suck. All right. So, thank you for listening to this episode of Permission to Leap. And hey, listen, if you like this show, please consider subscribing to the feed on your favorite podcast platform. We're basically everywhere: Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeart, all the things. And if you have an extra second, just leave us a review. I would love it. I mean, I love you no matter what, but a review, positive, 5 stars, really helps. And I also love when you take a screenshot and share the show with your social media networks. Just make sure to tag me at its.erintrafford or find me on LinkedIn over at Erin Trafford. Send me a connection request. And if you'd like to know more, check out the show notes, because that's where you will find the latest free downloads, free resources from Erin Trafford's Story and Strategy. Plus, you're going to get links to applications to work with me in either my Story and Strategy mentorship or as a private consulting client. I take a few of those a year. The show notes also where we put all the info to any upcoming masterclasses, events, and programs that you might want to participate in. And finally, if you have specific feedback for the show, or if you would like to be a guest on the show, yes, as of season 3, we're adding guests into the mix. Please reach out to team@erintrafford.com and someone will get back to you as soon as possible. Of course, this show is produced by Story Studio Network.